I was just a guy living paycheck to paycheck, flat broke after college. So who would have guessed I'd end up the husband of a powerhouse CEO? And that 5 years into our so-called marriage, she'd asked me to step aside for the one that got away. "I've given you more than enough," she said, her voice as crisp and cold as the Chicago winter outside her penthouse window. "You can't be greedy." I pointed to a dusty folio on the marble coffee table. "I signed the papers a year ago. You just haven't been home to see them." There was never any love between me and Isabel Beaumont. Our marriage was a transaction from the start, a mutually beneficial arrangement, to put it nicely. I'm no fool. I knew exactly what I was getting into. In this day and age, it seems like 9 out of 10 millionaire CEOs have a ghost from their past they can't shake, and 8 of those 9 will eventually try to get them back. Of course, while they're waiting for that grand romantic reunion, they need a placeholder to keep their families off their backs. And I, lucky me, was the placeholder she chose. I'll admit, she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. But I was also clear-eyed enough to know I didn't love her. 5 years ago, I just graduated from Northwestern. You know how it is, a diploma in one hand and an eviction notice practically in the other. Desperate, I called in a favor with my dad's old friend and landed a job as a security guard at a luxury condo building on the Gold Coast. On my very first day, I met Isabel Beaumont. She rolled down the window of her Maybach, her gaze sweeping over the uniformed staff before it locked onto me. She studied me for a long moment. "You need money, don't you?" "Student loans," I said. She nodded, as if that explained everything. Then came the follow-up. "I need to get married. Are you interested?" After a brief, surreal conversation, I understood her predicament. Her family was pushing her into a strategic marriage with the heir of another corporate dynasty. Once they were married, a divorce would be messy and complicated. But Isabel had her own great love, the one that got away, and she refused. The problem was, she didn't want to ask him to give up his current dream opportunity, abroad, to come back and marry her immediately. So, she needed a stand-in. A contract marriage. I'm the kind of guy who's never even won a free drink from a bottle cap. I never thought my uncanny resemblance to some other man's face would land me the golden ticket. I stood there, still holding the velvet rope for her car, my mind racing through the pros and cons. She must have mistaken my silence for hesitation, because she started sweetening the deal. "After we're married, I'll pay off all your loans. Of course," she added, "during the marriage, you can't see other women. You have to be a convincing husband. When we divorce, I'll give you a townhouse and $1 million tax-free. Any other conditions, you can name them now." I thought for a moment, then held up a single finger. "Just one. This can't interfere with my job." A small, genuine smile touched her lips. She nodded. "Deal." We were legally married within the hour. Prenup, asset declarations, the works. I stuffed the marriage certificate into my pocket and went right back to my post, velvet rope in hand. I knew this was probably the biggest break I'd ever get. So many people work their entire lives and get nowhere, not because they aren't capable, but because society has them trapped in a web. A mortgage, car payments, student loans, the sheer cost of living, kids' education, aging parents, it all bleeds you dry, pinning you to the bottom rung where you can never afford to stop climbing. Now, Isabel Beaumont had given me a ladder, a chance to leap out of the fishbowl. I had no idea our marriage had sent shockwaves through the Beaumont family. I didn't even have her phone number. The Beaumonts couldn't fathom why Isabel would marry me. We were from 2 different universes. One was the city's corporate royalty. The other was a rat in the race, fighting just to make rent. For the next month, my life didn't change at all. Just as I was starting to think this strange arrangement would stay quiet, an unfamiliar number shattered the peace. "My family wants to meet you." It took me 3 seconds to place the voice. It was my convenient wife. The moment they saw me, her family seemed to finally understand. "So, he's a stand-in," someone murmured. The gazes that fell on me were a mixture of condescension and amusement. A cheap knockoff is still a cheap knockoff. A woman slightly younger than Isabel sneered. Her contempt was blatant, undisguised. "Look at him. He probably rents his suit." A wave of laughter filled the opulent living room. Isabel shot me a slightly embarrassed glance, but said nothing to defend me. I couldn't be bothered to care. I just got a promotion at my real job, and my mood was great. My supervisor saw potential in me and wanted to groom me for a management track. I'd even bought a few books on operations management to study when I got home. But her family was determined to have some fun at my expense. When it was time to offer her mother a drink, I held out the delicate cup of coffee. She pointedly ignored it, letting it sit there in my outstretched hand. I knew what she was doing, refusing to accept me. What did that have to do with me? I wasn't her real son-in-law. I didn't need her approval. The scalding heat of the coffee seeped through the porcelain, burning my fingertips. I counted to 3 in my head. 1, 2, 3. I placed the cup firmly on the table in front of her. Mrs. Beaumont's face turned to stone. No class whatsoever, she said, her voice dripping with aristocratic disdain. I smiled. You're right, ma'am. And yet, here I am, your son-in-law. I added, I hear you're a great reader of the classics. Seems to me you only skimmed the Cliff's notes on manners. How dare you speak to her like that? Someone sputtered. The whole family started coming at me. I glanced at Isabel, who remained silent. Fine. If she wasn't going to step in, I'd handle it myself. I held my own, verbally sparring with a whole pack of them, deflecting their insults with calm logic. I was never arrogant, but I never backed down. The only thing they had on me was money. In terms of character, we were equals. They seemed to think that because I was poor, I had no right to defend my dignity, that I should just stand there and take their abuse. In the end, I'd call it a decisive victory. We parted on bad terms, skipping the planned family dinner entirely. Isabel drove me back. After a long silence, she finally spoke. No matter what, they're my parents. They're your elders. If they say a few things, you should just take it. I cut her off. You poured that coffee. You know exactly how hot it was. If I hadn't put it down, what do you think would have happened? But you still shouldn't have. I cut her off again. Ms. Beaumont, our agreement states that I am to act as your husband. It does not state that I have to be a doormat for your family and friends. Isabel seemed to want to say more, but I couldn't be bothered. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling. My supervisor's birthday was in a few days. As his newest protege, this was a golden opportunity to solidify our professional relationship. With no family or connections to speak of, a good relationship with a boss who valued me was everything. A little strategic brown-nosing was just part of the game. Isabel pulled up to the curb of my apartment building. Thank you for the ride, Miss Beaumont. She misunderstood, her eyes flicking to my phone screen. Leo, she said, her tone softening slightly. We only have a contract marriage. You don't have to go to such lengths to impress me. Powerhouse CEOs really are a little full of themselves. Ms. Beaumont, admit you can go now, I clarified. This gift is from my boss. People always try to look busy when they're embarrassed. She tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Let me at least walk you to the door. I shook my head. She didn't press the issue, just put the car in drive and pulled away. I let out a breath. I didn't realize I'd been holding and walked back to my own life, my steps feeling surprisingly light. Getting married really can change your luck. The next month, my boss promoted me to team lead. For the next couple of weeks, I was so busy, I barely had time to breathe. Then, after another all-nighter at the office, I stumbled out of my apartment building, exhausted, and walked straight into a wall of reporters. They swarmed me, shouting questions about my and Isabel Beaumont's whirlwind romance. 100 cameras flashed, blinding me. The constant clicking was dizzying. I pushed through the crowd and just ran. In the age of the internet, there are no secrets. It took me 15 minutes to piece together what had happened. Isabel had let something slip at a press conference. She'd used me as a shield against some probing questions, and the media, being the sharks they are, had quickly followed the trail of breadcrumbs right to my doorstep. This sudden chaos completely upended my quiet life. I'd never dealt with anything like this before. I was completely out of my depth. My phone rang, a jarring intrusion. The number was a long string of 8s. I knew it was Isabel. I was about to demand to know why she'd thrown me to the wolves when her voice, sharp with accusation, cut in first. Why wouldn't you at least wear something decent before leaving the house? I was speechless for a second. My silence only seemed to fuel the fire on the other end. It wasn't Isabel anymore. It was her mother's shrill voice, raining down on me like a thunderstorm. Are you doing this on purpose? Because you didn't get my approval, you deliberately play the victim for the media? Trying to use public opinion to pressure me. A news alert popped up on my laptop. Beaumont heiress's husband looks destitute. Is the Beaumont family mistreating their new son-in-law? The Rags to Riches story with a dark side. I clicked on a link. The first thing I saw was a high-resolution photo of my exhausted, unshaven face. Below it, a panel of so-called experts was dissecting every detail. I laughed, a bitter, angry sound. Mrs. Beaumont, let's be very clear. I wasn't the one who leaked this story. Your daughter exposed my identity and has turned my life into a circus. If anyone should be angry here, it's me, not you. You can't reason with unreasonable people. She was still ranting about my supposed shamelessness. I hung up, refusing to let her ruin what little composure I had left. I hadn't eaten since getting home from my overnight shift. I nuked a cup of ramen, opened my laptop, and went back to the sales reports I hadn't finished. I'd just taken my first bite when my phone rang again. This time it was Isabel, probably hiding in a corner somewhere, her voice hushed. I have a penthouse downtown. Why don't you move in? It's secure. It'll also help us manage the media. I thought she was overreacting. It was just some tabloid gossip. It wouldn't cause any real trouble for a corporate giant like Beaumont Industries. Seeing my hesitation, she thought I was disagreeing. She quickly explained, "My father is getting suspicious. He thinks our marriage is a sham. I need your help to convince him it's real." I slurped down a mouthful of noodles. "So what about the media? Aren't you worried he will see the news? The one that got away? If I try to refute the stories, my father will know for sure it's a fake marriage. He'll force me into the merger. To make him believe, I can't explain anything away. And besides, Julian is overseas, he won't see." "I'll do it," I said, cutting her off. In the instant she'd been talking, I'd already calculated the new set of pros and cons. The title of Beaumont's son-in-law could open doors for me professionally, maybe even propel me to a level I couldn't have imagined before. She was using me as a shield. It was only fair I got to wear the Beaumont family's armor for a little while. Isabel's penthouse was massive. Even living in the same space, we rarely saw each other. I came home late every night and dove straight into work. She, on the other hand, spent her nights on FaceTime, pouring her heart out to Julian. The moment their video call connected, it was always a drama of unshed tears and meaningful silences. I never understood it. They were both from wealthy families. If they were so desperately in love, getting married wouldn't be that hard. Does chasing your dreams mean you can't also have a life? Maybe that was one of those secrets of the ultra-rich I wasn't privy to. I had no interest in dissecting their bizarre melodrama, because my boss had just clapped me on the shoulder and given me another promotion. Wearing the title of Beaumont's son-in-law was like having a backstage pass. The people at work who used to go out of their way to undermine me were now practically pledging their allegiance. I effortlessly sidestepped the usual office politics and backstabbing. The name also worked wonders outside the office. Smaller companies, wanting to curry favor, were suddenly requesting to negotiate contracts specifically with me. For them, this was likely their one and only chance to have a business connection, however tenuous, to the Beaumont empire. It didn't matter if they came for Beaumont Industries or for Isabel. Once the contracts were signed, the quality of our company's products and my no-nonsense attitude kept them as loyal customers. Before long, these clients started referring new business to us. It was a virtuous cycle. Our hard-working little company began to expand rapidly, growing from 1 factory to 10. The pie-in-the-sky promises my boss had been making were finally becoming real. The company stock he'd awarded me actually paid out a hefty dividend at the end of the year. At the company's annual gala, the boss declared that I was the primary reason for our success. Then he promoted me again, this time to director of sales, with another significant raise. The man had guts and a sharp mind. In just 2 years, he transformed our obscure little firm into a major player. Now, even without the shimmer of the Beaumont name, we had a steady stream of orders. More orders meant more work. As a new sales director, I was busier than ever. And since I now held a chunk of the company's stock, I was essentially working for myself. I threw myself into it, flying all over the country for trade shows and negotiations. I was barely ever at the corporate headquarters anymore. My boss's new favorite line was, "Keep it up, Leo. You close a few more big deals, and I might just buy myself another sport car by year-end." Bosses, they're all the same. Time flew. Another year passed. I was in New York City, locked in a fierce battle with a rival company over a major contract. We were at a stalemate after days of verbal warfare. In the middle of the deadlock, my phone buzzed. It was Isabel. I ignored it. She called again and again. We were still technically married, and there were things she might need my cooperation on. Annoyed, I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. "When are you coming back?" she asked. "Busy with work." "Not sure yet." The truth was, I'd barely stayed at the penthouse at all for the past year. She just hadn't noticed. I get scared sleeping alone at night. It was hard to imagine those words coming from the Ice Queen CEO. I'd overheard her say similar things to Julian countless times, but I never thought she'd aim them at me. I felt a wave of goosebumps. "That's random," I said, and promptly hung up. Isabel had been acting strange lately. It started after I came back to the penthouse one night to find her passed out on the rug, reeking of alcohol. Worried she was in real trouble, I called 911. I planned to call the ambulance and head up to my room, but the paramedics stopped me. "You're the patient's husband. Her condition is unclear." I thought about it and decided to go with them to the hospital. Legally, I was her next of kin. And honestly, the Isabel Beaumont's husband title had given me a lot of advantages over the years. The easiest thing would have been to call her family, but I didn't have a single one of their numbers or any of her friends for that matter. When Isabel woke up, She just wailed, demanding to know why I hadn't let her die. I was completely baffled. Sobbing, she explained that Julian, the man she'd been waiting for, had gotten married to a foreign woman he'd been seeing for a while. He'd even warned Isabel to stop harassing him and stay out of his life. Isabel, who had sailed through life on a cloud of privilege, had never experienced a setback like this. Drowning her sorrows in expensive liquor only made it worse. Somewhere in her drunken haze, she decided life wasn't worth living. If it weren't for me, she would have become a tragic headline, another casualty of lost love. It struck me then just how deep the Beaumont foundations ran. Isabel could spend her days in a vortex of romantic drama, yet Beaumont Industries remained as solid as a mountain. Meanwhile, I worried every day that I was taking on too much, that I'd go on a 2-week business trip and come back to find my company had gone under. Once I confirmed she was physically okay, I left the hospital. But after that, she wasn't the same. The way she looked at me was different, intense. She even tried to drag me out shopping with her. It was insane. Her, of all people. If a reporter snapped a picture, it would be another media firestorm. I refused flat out. She was not happy. She started talking about how her near-death experience had been a wake-up call, how she finally understood that cherishing the person in front of you was the true meaning of life. Then, she looked at me with unnerving sincerity. "I hope you can accept my feelings," she'd said. I saw right through it. Her ex was gone, and she couldn't stand the thought of him seeing her alone and miserable. She was just looking for a replacement to channel her grief. I hadn't done anything particularly evil in my life. Why was I being punished with this? Alarm bells screamed in my head. I took a small step back. "I'm sorry, Ms. Beaumont, I have work to do." A wounded look crossed her face, as if she couldn't comprehend my subtext. "You don't want to go shopping with me? That's fine. At least try some of this soup I made for you." I quickly refused. I already ate. Without giving her another chance to speak, I turned to head upstairs. "Leo." Her voice was soft, pleading. Whether it was intentional or not, the silk of her robe shifted, revealing more than it concealed. Before this, she always wore pajamas that covered her from neck to ankle. I spent all afternoon making it. Just one bite. My only reply was 2 words. "I'm sorry." I went to my room and locked the door. Lying on the bed, my mind raced. A few minutes later, I shot up and started packing a suitcase. I couldn't stay in this penthouse anymore. I had to move. My very integrity was at stake. Thankfully, with my current financial situation, renting a nice apartment of my own was no problem at all. I delegated the task of finding a new apartment to my assistant, and in the meantime, volunteered for an extended business trip. The main goal was to put some distance between myself and Isabel, but her calls were relentless. At first, I'd answer, patiently trying to reiterate the nature of our relationship. I soon realized she wasn't listening, completely lost in her own narrative. Eventually, I stopped wasting my breath and would just hang up if it wasn't an actual emergency. Back in the conference room in New York, after a long and grueling battle of wits, I finally secured the contract. I had to admit, it was the toughest negotiation of my career. The other company's representative, a woman my age, extended her hand. "It's still early. How about we grab dinner to celebrate?" I had no one to go home to, so I readily agreed. Over dinner, I discovered, to my surprise, that we were both Northwestern alums. She had graduated a year ahead of me. Rachel Vance. Her starting point out of college was the finish line I was just now crossing. It was a humbling reminder that some things can't be achieved through hard work alone. Her eyes crinkled at the corners as she smiled. "You're one of the most impressive alums I've met." My ego enjoyed the small boost. We clinked our wine glasses, sharing a smile. The alumni connection instantly broke the ice. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. In the process, I learned a great deal about our company's upcoming strategic plans. My mind started turning. I realized this was a potential opportunity for my own company to take another huge leap forward. My conversation became even more animated. I never expected Isabel Beaumont to show up, and I certainly never expected her to throw open the door to our private dining room. "Honey," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "Who is she?" I felt a vein begin to throb in my temple. "Isabel, what are you doing here?" "You weren't answering my calls. I was worried, so I came to find you." I set down my wine glass. "Isabel, I have been very clear with you. We have a contract marriage. There are no feelings involved. If I've done anything to give you the wrong impression, I apologize and I am clarifying it now." But Isabel was still trapped in her own world. She ignored my explanation, her eyes fixed on Rachel. "Who is she? Is it because of her that you won't accept me?" The restaurant was buzzing, but at the sound of our commotion, a hush fell over the nearby tables. Patrons turned, eager for a free show. I rubbed my brow, exhausted. She is a business partner. A look of surprise, almost delight, flashed across Isabel's face. Afraid of what nonsensical thing she might say next, and wanting to end the scene, I made a hasty apology to Rachel and quickly left. As I walked, I was already on the phone with my assistant. "Where's the apartment you rented for me?" Isabel's sudden appearance gave me a terrible feeling. Sure enough, my assistant stammered for a moment before confessing. "Ms. Beaumont said she would handle it personally. I thought, since you're married, it was a family matter and I shouldn't interfere." I nearly choked on my own frustration. My head was pounding. "That was a task I assigned to you, which you failed to complete," I said, my voice tight with anger. "Go to HR and pay the fine, as per company policy. If this happens again, you can find another job." I had a meeting the next morning, so I had no choice but to board the same flight back to Chicago with Isabel. From the moment we took off, I was scrolling through hotel booking sites on my phone. "Leo, don't be angry," she pleaded. "You don't have anywhere else to go anyway. Why not just come home? I know I was wrong. My emotional messiness hurt you. I promise from now on, you're the only one for me. You could just stay home. You won't have to work so hard anymore. I'll take care of you." She chattered on, planning our future, and a chill went down my spine. Oh God, she wanted to lock me away, keep me as her pet project. That was a kind of devotion I wanted absolutely no part of. Suddenly, I understood why Julian had run for the hills. What I still couldn't understand was how a person like this could be the CEO of Beaumont Industries, even if it was just a title while her father still pulled the real strings. To avoid this nightmare becoming my permanent reality, I had to get this divorce finalized. Immediately, the moment we landed at O'Hare, I saw my chance. I made a sudden dash, melting into the crowd and disappearing before she could react. That very night, I hired a lawyer and had him draft the divorce papers. A godsend. 3 months later, the Beaumont family strategic merger was finally happening. Only the groom wasn't Isabel's problem anymore. Her father had chosen his niece, Isabel's cousin, for the marriage. To show the importance of the alliance, the wedding was a massive, high society affair. An invitation was delivered to me personally by Isabel's mother. The arrogance was gone, replaced by an almost pleading tone. "Could you please come home and see Isabel? She won't eat or drink when she can't see you. I'm afraid her body won't hold up." Mrs. Beaumont clutched my hand, her eyes welling with tears. I could understand a mother's heart, but I still refused. This was a business transaction. Isabel might have developed some kind of attachment, but she could walk away from this anytime, completely unscathed. If I let myself get emotionally involved, I'd be the one left with nothing. Calculating risk and avoiding trouble was my guiding principle. I wasn't in a position to be handing out charity. All I did was call an ambulance for her once, and I'd been dealing with the fallout for months. If I agreed to this, who knew what kind of mess I'd be dragging myself into? Watching the news coverage of the lavish Beaumont wedding, I breathed a long sigh of relief. With her cousin taking one for the team, Isabel was free from the threat of an arranged marriage. Our partnership could finally come to an end. I had my assistant place my signed copy of the divorce agreement on the coffee table in Isabel's penthouse. Days passed, then weeks. There was no response. It was like the document had been swallowed by a black hole. After a few months, my patience ran out. I contacted her household manager. Since her cousin's wedding, the manager explained, Ms. Beaumont has been completely immersed in the business. She hasn't been back to the penthouse in weeks. Apparently, Isabel's cousin was highly capable. Backed by her new husband's family, she was making aggressive moves within the company, and many of the executives and investors were starting to rally behind her. The woman who had been content to wallow in heartbreak finally sensed a real crisis and had thrown herself into managing the company. Around the same time, my boss called me into his office. He told me he'd made enough money and was ready to spend the rest of his life chasing travel and romance. He asked if I was interested in buying his majority stake in the company. I froze for a second. The words flashed in my mind. I want to be the boss, but my pragmatic side immediately took over. Is the company in trouble? Didn't audit find some creative accounting? Is he trying to run and leave me holding the bag? My boss, now my former boss, gave me a knowing look. We'd worked together long enough for him to read me like a book. He clapped me on the shoulder, his voice turning earnest. Leo, money is a game you can't win. When you get to my age, you'll understand. Besides, I made all this cash. It feels wrong to just leave it all to my son without enjoying some of it myself. He cleared his throat. Anyway, that's beside the point. Do you want it or not? I can give you a friendly price. To be honest, I was tempted. Being my own boss had always been the ultimate dream, and now it was within reach. I quickly started running the numbers in my head. My hesitation must have been obvious because he started playing the emotional card. You were here from the beginning, Leo. You helped build this company every step of the way. Honestly, you've put more heart and soul into this place than anyone, including me. Even though I'm leaving, I want to see it continue to thrive. I wouldn't trust it with anyone else. Only you. He was so sincere that I let my guard down and allowed myself to feel a bit of sentimentality. I slammed my hand on the table and agreed to take over. I liquidated every asset I had, even selling the townhouse I'd just finished furnishing. It still wasn't enough. My ex-boss gave me a 3-year window to pay off the rest. After I signed the promissory note, his face crinkled into a wide, triumphant smile. I suspected he'd planned this all along, that he knew my net worth down to the last dollar. I was officially the most broke boss in Chicago. My first day in charge, I was already buried under a mountain of debt. I didn't even have a home anymore. To get a handle on things, I worked day and night, learning the ins and outs of running a company while simultaneously reassuring the senior staff. The first few months were rough, but I gritted my teeth and pushed through. After a year, things had finally stabilized. Company revenue was climbing steadily. The day I made the first major payment on my debt, I collapsed into my office chair and let out a huge sigh of relief. Ring, ring. My phone buzzed. A number that looked vaguely familiar. It took me a moment, and then it hit me. I still had a wife. I've been so busy this past year. I'd completely forgotten I needed to get divorced. The next second, Isabel's voice came through the line. Leo, we need to meet. A year had passed. I figured she'd had time to come to her senses. I agreed to meet, suggesting the penthouse where we used to live. I never expected to see Rachel Vance in the same complex, walking her dog. She looked surprised to see me. Leo, what are you doing here? Did you just move in? Which building are you in? A wave of bitter irony washed over me. Did I look like I could afford a place here? I pointed towards Isabel's building. I'm here to finalize a divorce with my ex-wife. Rachel's expression suddenly turned serious. Why not meet in a public place? You can't trust people. What if? Don't worry, I said, trying to reassure her. I'd done my homework. Isabel's old flame, Julian, had gotten a divorce and was now living with her. This meeting was just about her wanting to cut ties with me quickly so she could be with him. I'd been with her for 5 years. I had a pretty good handle on her psychology. She wasn't necessarily in love with anyone. She was in love with the idea of being in love, of deep, dramatic feeling. But the whole pathetic, convoluted backstory. I was too embarrassed to explain it to Rachel. How could we collaborate in the future if she knew I was part of such a soap opera? Seeing my insistence, Rachel gave her dog a determined pat on the head. All right, but me and Buster will be out here, keeping an eye on things. If anything seems wrong, you just yell. I couldn't bring myself to refuse her kind, if slightly nosy, offer. I nodded my thanks. I pushed open the penthouse door. A man was sitting on the living room sofa. Just then, Isabel emerged from the kitchen, a bowl of washed fruit in her hands and a smile on her face. When she saw me, she instinctively moved to block my view of the man. She dispensed with the pleasantries and got straight to the point. I'm sorry, Leo. I tried. I really tried to make it work with you. But my heart, it won't let me. I still love him. Spoken like a true corporate CEO. So eloquent. To an outsider, it would sound like I was the one who had been desperately clinging to our sham marriage. I just smirked and said nothing. My silence seemed to embolden her. I've given you more than enough. You can't be greedy. It's time for you to give up the position of husband. I sighed. You haven't been home in a long time, have you, Isabel? She looked at me, confused. I gestured towards the second-floor study. The divorce agreement. I signed it a year ago. You just never came home to see it. The color drained from Isabel's face. She rushed upstairs and came back down moments later, her expression grim, holding 2 copies of the divorce agreement. The terms were simple, following our original prenup. Apart from what she had initially promised me, our finances were completely separate. Isabel had no objections. She signed the papers right there in front of me. Neither of us was one for procrastination. The moment the ink was dry, we headed out to get the divorce legally registered. As we walked out the main entrance, we saw Rachel. She was craning her neck, peering towards the penthouse, the flame of gossip burning brightly in her eyes. When she saw me emerge unscathed, a flicker of disappointment crossed her face. So much for my touching moment of gratitude. She was just here for the show. I didn't have a car, so I had to catch a ride with Isabel. Rachel, ignoring Isabel's thunderous expression, cheerfully squeezed into the back seat with a wide grin. The divorce process was surprisingly fast. Rachel knew someone at the county clerk's office and got us moved to the front of the line. We walked out with the official dissolution of marriage in hand. As we were parting ways, some wire in Isabel's brain must have short-circuited again. She suddenly grabbed my hand. Leo, It's actually you I love, she pleaded, her eyes wild. I was just using him to make you jealous. Can we get remarried? Please. I snatched my hand back and took 2 quick steps away, clutching my divorce decree like a survivor clinging to a life raft. In that moment, I finally understood why her family, despite their disapproval, had never done anything to seriously interfere with our marriage. They must have known this was always a possibility. They probably saw it all coming. So much for the world handing out free lottery tickets to ordinary guys. The idea of a billionaire CEO falling for a divorced, middle-aged woman with kids, or Donald Trump falling for his cleaning lady, it's all just fantasy. If a golden opportunity that seems too good to be true falls into your lap, don't hesitate. Run. It's a trap. The first question you should always ask yourself is, do I really deserve this? If it hadn't been for Rachel's unexpected help, I might not have escaped so easily. Thank God I had the divorce certificate in my hand before she had her latest breakdown. She saw the undisguised disgust in my eyes, and she just stood there, looking utterly defeated. I sold the townhouse Isabel had given me, and, combined with the $1 million from the settlement, I finally paid off the debt to my former boss. Once everything was settled, I called Rachel. She had helped me out in a big way, and I owed her. Besides, the future growth of my company might very well depend on this new, powerful connection. During dinner, her phone buzzed nonstop. Annoyed, she finally just turned it off. So, I hear you're a boss now, she said with a bright, teasing smile. I spread my hands wide. Ever seen a boss who's completely broke? Well then, mister. Big shot broke boss, she said, her eyes twinkling. Are you interested in a long-term partnership? I raised my glass. To our prosperous partnership. To our partnership, she echoed, her glass clinking against mine.